Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and this is the Eve Universe show's continued coverage of the CSM 17, this time with Moce. How's it going, Moce?
Doing pretty good. How are you today?
Good. First and foremost, that is how to pronounce his name, just in case you were curious. I had to ask ahead of time, but the first thing we learned about the candidate is that his name is, in fact, Moce. Why did you choose a bizarre spelling of a relatively normal word?
So I've been gaming with this gamer tag for more than 2 decades. And when I originally came up with the name, it was actually on a random name generator. And when I came up with it, I thought it was a pretty awesome name. I was trying to figure out how you would pronounce that. I figured the CE was that sort of thing. So I was like, forget it, it's Moss, and then I went with it.
Fair enough. All right. All right. So, in your candidacy, you say that you're not some big shot dude. I'm pretty sure I've never heard of you before. So, who is Moce?
Well, I'm the leader of the Warriors of Soul. It's a smaller alliance. We have just shy of 600 members. Basically, I've been a line member for years in big blocks. I've played in high sec. I've been in wormhole. I lived in a C4 with a C5 C3 static in it. We defended it until we were fully evicted. I've lived everywhere except for low sec. I've been in large wars. I was World War B2. I've got a whole bunch of keep stars on my kill board. Um, I was there when the whole thing collapsed. You know, it's it's I'm one of you is what I am. And then within the past year or so, I decided to go ahead and form my corp. So I formed a corp. It grew rapidly, and then I got a whole bunch of people that wanted me to make an alliance. And so I made an alliance, and next thing you know, it steamrolled, and now we have Sov, and I'm part of Fire Coalition.
Well, very cool. What were you part of before, like during World War B?
I was in Test Alliance. I've been in 3 different corps within Test. Most recently, I was in Dreadit, and we were, you know, I was there for a lot of the fights, part of the push on 1DQ and everything else. So I've been in some fairly agonizing tie dye conflicts. So I'm very well versed on on nullsec and PvP combat and stuff like that. But generally from a big block perspective from gangs, I'm particularly like solo PvP. As fun as that, I like watching it. I like watching streamers when they're running solo PvP. But personally, I like the interaction of groups. I like seeing group PvP. You know, I like people having to make decisions that'll either make or break a team.
So it says here that you got started in Ultima Online, and you lament the fact that the dev team obliterated what made EVE Online unique: the unrestricted PvP, unrestricted looting of a fallen foe. First of all, I thought that what made Ultima Online unique was that it was like the first open world MMO. But I can see your point there. But the thing is that like, while sandbox is incredibly important, the more if it's goes past the threshold of unrestricted, it ends up being a detriment to the game itself, like its numbers and whatnot, right? Like because
That's basically what killed Ultima. I mean, what happened with Ultima was they made Trammel, so they basically split the world in half.
right.
Anyone that wanted PvP stayed in Felucia, and anyone that wanted PvE and didn't want to get hurt because they were so scared or whatever the hell, they all went to Trammel. So what you ended up having is like a huge exodus of what I would call the I don't want to call them the sheep, but your anyone that wanted to do any kind of like mining or chopping wood or anything like that just disappeared, and
Right.
PvP was stagnant. It killed the servers.
Yeah, and I think that part, like, I would say that the problem wasn't that it was unrestricted and now isn't. It was that it went the other direction. That like you could transfer between the two. So the question is, why would you do anything on the PvP shard besides go and do PvP? Therefore, there's nobody in there that are just trying to live there, right? Is that
Exactly.
pretty much assessed? Yeah. So the lesson there is that while there does need to be a space for non-PvP, or at least people less interested in PvP, and a space for people highly interested in the PvP, they need to, in some ways, live in the same space, right? So, like, EVE Online fixes this through high sec versus null sec. So rather than being two different servers, it's one place. There's reason to be in one. There's reason to be in the other. Null sec isn't completely unsafe, and high sec isn't completely safe. So I feel like that's a much better solution, don't you?
I 100% agree.
Okay.
I don't want any place to be wholeheartedly safe, but at the same time, putting people at undue risk is also kind of crappy.
All right. So what lessons can we learn from that Ultima Online that can be applied to EVE Online then?
The point I was trying to make with that, along with the follow up with the Galaxy, is that you have this incredible game that that had a rich involvement from players, just this great setup, and it got ruined by poor decisions. Where I like Eve has Eve has CSM, which hopefully they're putting a lot of attention to. At least they have it. And from my conversations with some of the CSM, like CCP Swift and all that, they definitely interact with the CSM members. So it seems like they actually give more of a crap than the developers for the previous games did.
Right. And then next, you have Star Wars Galaxies, because you are the herald of dying games, apparently. No,
Yes, I am.
I mean, Star Wars Galaxies is like the classic discussion point in these kinds of things within gaming circles, right? Star Wars Galaxies is the cautionary tale of making too big of a change that alienates your current audience without actually attracting a new audience, right?
Absolutely. That poor game. What a great game when it first launched. My God, I was there from launch day, and it was an outstanding game. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and then actually being able to be in a Wookiee and people couldn't understand me unless they learned the language. It was just an absolutely awesome game,
Right.
and they torpedoed it.
Yeah. So do you know why they did? Like, I know what they did, but like, I mean, obviously they felt the need for a pretty significant change.
Well, what it is you get these broad paint strokes that you'll get developers that'll do. They'll take these broad strokes and they'll try to paint the whole game, trying to fix it with a giant bat,
Right.
and without using the deft hand, without being a little more cautious, a little more forethought into what they're doing and looking at it from different perspectives. And instead, what they do is they take this gigantic Nerf bat and they just smash the whole thing, and it alienates huge groups of players. And as you can see, they don't come back. You'll get people that'll just leave. They'll find other games. They don't come back.
But what was the problem that they were trying to solve? Like in Ultima Online, I could say like the full scale PvP was oppressive to people who just wanted to live their life. You know, I had a very long, I know I had a cycle of being in town, making a lot of skull caps, selling them, getting a suit of armor, going outside, fighting llamas for about an hour, getting ganked by some PvPer, going back to town and starting over for like a year. That was my life. That's why Ultima Online felt the need that they needed to make the change and make a dramatic change. The change obviously did more damage than the original conditions. What was the thing that Star Wars Galaxies was trying to fix?
Well, at the point that I left, they were trying to balance the various professions. They had something of a balance. There were some imbalances here and there, but they were trying to balance the professions, and they took a big swing at it. And they went so far. I can't remember exactly what the change was that they specifically did. I mean, you're talking 15 years ago, but I remember that it was such a wild swing that like whole groups of players for various classes just they just straight left the game. They spent all this
Right.
time building up their characters literally to have a useless character, and
Yeah, it
that
wasn't
was
just a
it.
rebalance. It was the new combat system. Like literally things were just different than they were before.
Oh yeah,
Period.
and it wasn't a small change either. It was a huge. It was almost a new game with the same faces on your characters.
Right.
That was it.
Jedi went from being this extremely prestigious thing that like you had to work towards and very few people ever got, and it was this personalized path, to you can select it in character selection.
Oh my god, that pissed me off so bad.
Yeah.
I actually, the first time I got killed by a Jedi, well, a Sith really, but first time I got killed by one of those, I'll never forget it. My corp is just sitting there, or corp or whatever we were. I think we were a guild or clan or whatever. We were sitting there at a star base, and we were just, or the what was it called? The starport, yeah, starport. And we were just trying to ambush any Imperials that were showing up. And sure enough, one shows up and he's got a lightsaber, and we all died.
Right. So it's funny because like a lot of people, a lot of Eve players remember Star Wars Galaxies fondly. There's a pretty good overlap between those populations. And the thing that I liked, that I think is important about Star Wars Galaxies, like you talk about Ultima Online and how it's this open PvP thing, and that was kind of what was exciting about it for a lot of people. Star Wars Galaxies was a little bit different though, because it was more about the stories, right? We talk about this in Eve too, but we think about the stories in the context of PvP or fighting or whatever. But in when I talk to people about Star Wars Galaxies, it isn't just like, oh well, you could just kill people or whatever. It's like, no, I was a performer. My whole thing was I went to bars and I played songs for people. Like, like it was the non-combat professions. It was the non-gamified sides of things that I always found so interesting, and was the real magic that was lost in Star Wars Galaxies, from my understanding.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I did like the storylines that they had in Star Wars. I liked the way it built on it. It was nice in that regard. Like if I could have combined a little bit of more of an open PvP setup, like you had in Ultima, with what they had in Star Wars, that would have been awesome. And that's actually what Eve kind of bridged that gap for me.
Right. Well, you started your story with those, and those are the reason why I'm focusing on those is because a lot of people believe that Eve Online is at that crux that those two other games were. I
wholeheartedly agree.
Deep, real problems with Eve. CCP's interested in making dramatic changes to fix those problems. However, as we've seen in these two examples in particular, if you do it wrong, you actually end up potentially doing more damage. Like, even if you transfer to something good, if we don't rehabilitate Eve Online's reputation, then we could just alienate all the bad guys, and then not bring in any good guys. I don't know why I said bad guys and good guys, but we could alienate all the vets, but without bringing in a new philosophy of people, because everybody still avoids it because Psychopath Simulator. And then we just end up with a dead game that, been better off to just let it coast until it, the servers fell apart.
And that's precisely why I'm running now. I never really ran for, well, I never even considered running for CSM before. I would sometimes follow what the CSM was doing. But for the most part, I was just like most of the players out there. I would see what CCP was putting out there. I'd read what they put out there, and I would just get hit with the surprise of, this is what just happened. This is what just happened. This is what happened. I never felt like I was a part of the development of it. It just, to me, it felt like it just hit us when it hit us, and
so
all of a sudden my eyes popped open.
Yeah. Are you more on the side that we should just keep it the way it is for the people that like it, or that we should make the change but do it carefully?
We need to change some things. We have players leaving in mass. There are things that definitely need balances. There are balances and changes that were made that were absolutely a bad way to go. I mean, look what happened to the industrialists in this game.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's
Like these change,
amazing.
but that's what I'm saying. Like these changes are an attempt to do that. So should CCP just like go back to the way it was and just let it kind of be Titans Online for the people that are left and let them enjoy themselves? Or do you think that this gambit of making the game objectively worse for old school vets with tons of wealth in an attempt to make it better for newer players is the way to go?
My favorite part about that and about what various people have put forward is this whole thinking of black and white. It's either this or either that. Why can't it be both? Why can't we have our Titans? Why can't we have our null sec guys flying around? Why can't we also make a better world for the newbies? Because right now, if you start a new tune, because I actually have a tune called New Player or something like that, I forget its name, and I specifically have that one to remind myself just how crappy it is to be a new bro. When you start up and you've got that horrendous looking UI, you're basically thrown into this incredibly high learning curve, and all you see is spam and local, buy this, do this, and it's all scams and everything else, and it's just scrolling crap in Jita. It kind of sucks to be a new bro. It really does.
Yeah, and,
Um,
and it's absolutely true that that new bro, that real new bro, their experience isn't made better or worse by people having Titans. That's not
yeah,
either
it doesn't
way.
affect them.
Right.
You know who gets affected by Titans are the players that suddenly get roughly into the mid range, and this is where we're weak. Okay, new bros are not being affected by Titans. Veterans are not being affected by Titans. We know how to deal with them. You avoid them and or you're in them. Okay. I don't have them. I have capitals. I don't have a Titan yet. I'd rather not be in a coffin yet. But what we have is we have the middle group. You have a group of players that have gotten to the point where they're just about where they're flying heavy assault cruisers, they're flying the T2 ships, they're really starting to get good at PvP. They get together with a group of their friends and they're like, hey, let's grab some Sov. And all of a sudden there's 15 initiative Titans, blasting them in the face. You know, that's just obviously an extreme example. It doesn't really happen like that, but it can. And those are the people that are upset about Titans. Okay, there that doesn't really affect new bros at all.
Right. Although I will say that, people with so much wealth that the game was not ever designed for does have an impact on new bros. But I would also agree that that is only true because of other design that's bad, right? One of the things I've been thinking about a lot recently is this like notion that like the Eve is to be taught by other players as like a necessity. But the issue is that when we rely on players as the only way that Eve is like worth engaging with, well, A, that manages to miss a lot of people that otherwise could get into Eve if there was a better ramp up into that whole process. Then maybe they would eventually want to get into doing stuff with other people, but without something to at least start in, they quit before they even get there. But also, that's when you get things like, well, you don't have a Titan. That ends up being a problem, right? If I have to get involved with other people in order for me to be able to have fun, then suddenly how much power and wealth other people have matter to me a lot more than if I'm perfectly happy doing, cool missions or exploration or, whatever, right?
Yep. Well, and then the thing is that like, the whole idea of getting dropped on by Titans, it doesn't really happen. The big blocks are not going to drop, 15 or so Titans on say a small alliance of say 150, 200 people that are trying to grab a small piece of space that has like almost no security sec up in Cloud Ring or something like that. They're just not going to do that.
Snuff
Now, what you
absolutely
are
will.
going to get, yeah, Snuff might, but like the big blocks, like Goons and Fire and
Right.
Horde, they're not going to be dropping on people like that.
But to the guy who's staring down 7 Titans on his Fortizar, that doesn't, it's like, well, at least there's not 40. Like they don't, that doesn't
Yeah,
do any, that doesn't do any help for them.
True, but again, if you find yourself in a spot where you're trying to take Sov in an area where people have that many Titans, you probably should have done a little bit of research on what's in the area. You don't go after space like that. That's not how you want to try to grab space. And to be honest with you, if you don't understand that, you probably don't really need to be running an alliance yet, or at least not one trying to grab space and null, because it is violent out here. In a scale that like individual PvPers may not quite get. Because they're just going out there, they're looking for fights, and people are docking up, and they're like, "Oh my god, it's dead in PVE or in null." If you think it's dead, get about 60 or 70 of your buddies and try to grab some Sov, and then let me know how that turns out for you. Because believe me, it's only dead on a small scale. It is definitely not dead on a large scale.
Do you think that the phase of scarcity and the other changes that are associated with that since the Chaos era were a necessary evil, or do you feel like they were misguided?
See, I'm glad you asked that question, because it harkens back to our original discussion where devs taking big swings at something.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably necessary, um, but not at the level that they took a swing at with. That was way, way, way too far. I mean, they flat out took Tritanium out of nullsec. I mean, they went way too far. We lost tons of indie players. I personally know indie players that were able to build super capitals and aren't even building ammunition now.
Right.
They don't want to. They're pissed off. They were used to the way they did things. They're mad. It was too much of an adjustment. Did they need to do it? Of course. But if you look at my time frame when I joined, I started playing EVE in 2014, but I didn't really get into the real swing of it until after really the age of the Rokels, the Rorks. I never really got into that, so I'm not old money.
Right.
I'm not running around with 15 trillion ISK. So now I've got these players, yeah, the old school guys, they've got trillions of ISK, whatever. And then you've got guys like me who I'm at the point where I've got capitals myself. We're running an alliance, and I don't have trillions of ISK. And all of a sudden, Eve comes at me with a giant baseball bat.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the way you maintain a healthy game. Not by trying to you go after a group of veteran players because they apparently were too loyal to you, and you start bashing on them. It's unsuccessful because, again, they have trillions of ISK. If they really need the supplies that you're trying to deny them, they're just going to buy it and have it shipped over. It's literally a tiny little inconvenience. There's nothing they're going to be able to do to the Imperium or to Horde or to Frat that's actually going to really make that big of a difference that their logistics chain can't just simply adjust fire to. Whereas we're players like us, those of us who are not new, but say 8 years or less, we're not old money. That giant Nerf bat literally smashed us in the face.
Right. Although, I mean, I think that most of the quote unquote old, like, money exploded in 2016 to 2019, but you're not wrong. Um, that said, I assume that you watched the keynote and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Assuming
I
that
caught a lot of it.
assuming that what they said is what they're actually going. Like, I'm not really interested in entertaining the idea that CCP is lying or something like that. But like, just based on what they said that they're going to do on the expansion in the winter and all that stuff, do you think that that is, at least broad strokes, what it's going to take to actually navigate through this path? Do you think that what they've announced is going to be the No Man's Sky situation or the Star Wars Galaxy situation?
I'm actually afraid it's a Star Wars Galaxy situation. I'm optimistic on the what's it called, on the faction PvP. I actually tried that for a couple months. I tried to do that faction PvP. I was really excited about representing Caldari because Caldari forever. Um, but man, did that suck. That faction just absolutely sucked. Yeah, I saw that you could make ISK. I saw the way that you make ISK, and I guessed that I could do. I mean, I figured I could make money doing it, but it felt like a dead form of game content. It certainly wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for groups of players that were just engaging groups of Galante players and just absolute, having at it, and it's just not there.
But doesn't that represent potential that is unrealized?
Yes, absolutely. That's why I'm cautiously optimistic about that part of it.
Got it.
The problem is I'm afraid that it's just like a pendulum where they took a swing at something that they thought needed to be fixed, and they went way too far. They just completely went off. I think we can pretty much all unanimously agree that they went way too far off the reservation on that one, and I'm afraid that it's a pendulum swing, and they're like, oh my god, we got to either walk back, or try to adjust fire, and they're going to go too far the opposite direction, and they're going to start alienating other groups of players. I'm actually concerned that they're taking too big a swing at stuff.
Just based on what they've talked about, what is the nightmare scenario? What do you think is the pendulum swinging too far?
You know, any number of things. To be honest with you, the problem is that I'm not 100% versed on everything that they've proposed on that whole thing. Um, but my fear is that they have
You're just speaking from
like from what I
experience.
yeah, speaking from experience,
Yeah.
my fear is that they're going to swing the other way, and that we have one group of players that left for the first pendulum swing, and we're going to get another from the other side.
Yeah. Fonsui likes to say that CCP learns all the wrong lessons, which is why I find it incredibly important for us to have the correct people on the CSM this year more than a long time. Because, like, let's be totally honest. During the scarcity era, there were probably points in which we almost didn't even need a CSM. You know, the CSM were often complaining that they weren't being communicated with. But a lot of that is because CCP knew what they wanted to do. They had the metrics and they had the plan. They knew a lot of the moves that they were going to make weren't going to be popular. So, like, if you know that something is going to just straight up go, if the feedback's going to be, that's dumb, why are you doing it? Then why even present it to the CSM? And so as a result, we see a lot of things happen without very much talking about it ahead of time. However, I see FanFest as being that turning point where they said, okay, the portcullis is coming back up. We are going to start talking about things again, and we want to start moving forward rather than cleaning up the mess. So I think it's really critical for us to have CSM members who both have a firm idea as to how to prevent bad things from happening, but also people that have a vision of what CCP is going for, that sees the potential and that can help them realize it. Are you that person?
Absolutely. I wouldn't even be attempting to run if I didn't think I at least had that potential. The biggest issue that we're having is this whole announcing changes without really actually announcing changes. They're wanting to release things in arcs, and they're kind of wanting to surprise us with things, and we'll let you know as it happens, and they'll give us these tantalizing little tidbits that a lot of people are guessing what they mean, and the reality is that
I don't know
it
about a
maybe
lot
it's
of
being
people. I'm just kidding.
well, unfortunately, more are guessing than what actually know. And the CSM members that might actually know are under an NDA, so it's not like they can really disclose it. We're forced to have to just trust in them,
Right.
except that there's like one or two CSMs that actually talk to the player base, and one of them is Brisk.
So, but you know, on the, it could very well be that we're in that weird in between time. Like, yeah, we know that they're going to come out with stuff through the arcs, but we just haven't seen it yet, right? There's nothing that's convinced somebody that's true. So yeah, this is in at the moment a whole lot of talk without a lot of understanding. I
Oh yeah,
assume that that's going to change sooner rather than later. This is a temporary situation and a temporary crisis of faith, hopefully. Well, actually, I guess either way, because even if it goes the other way, then it's like now we just know that it's crap. But um, do you believe in what they are doing now?
I believe in their intent. I believe that they want to do right. I don't believe that they have ill will toward the game. There are some people that, if you look at forums, there's some names that'll stick out. I won't throw any names under the bus, but there are definitely people who believe that CCP means ill will toward the game, to the player base. They hate their players, all that other stuff. I don't believe any of that. I believe that CCP wants this game to continue. It's in their best interest. Um, I mean, some of them play the game. I mean, some of my guys killed a CCP guy the other day in our ESS. So I mean, they're playing the game. They mean well. So I think that if we're able to speak with them and get a nice back and forth dialogue going, they get to see all aspects of it. They obviously get final say. It's their game, but at least then they can make educated decisions with better input.
So there are some people that would say that going towards story-driven content is removing sand from the sandbox. There are others that would say that CCP literally is the E in PvE. So when we talk about content, that's what CCP needs to come up with. Do you think that the idea of story arcs and the use of faction warfare in the empires as a way of kind of pushing forward as a catalyst for things in Eve, do you think that's a good idea?
Oh, sure, it's fine. I don't see any reason why arcs or having storylines are even remotely an issue. I mean, frankly, the whole Triglavian thing, it caught me by surprise too, when all of a sudden a huge section of high sec basically became hostile and inaccessible. All of a sudden I couldn't fly to Amar from Jita anymore. It affected me more because I happened to be in high sec when that went down. Uh, but living in null, it doesn't hardly affect me at all at the moment. But the thing is that having a storyline is cool. It's just another aspect for the game. The best part about living in a sandbox and playing in a sandbox is having the option to participate in arcs and storylines and jump into all those things. Like, what was that? They just did that uh, Doctor Who thing. There were people that absolutely loved that. I hated it. I hated every second of it, but that's just because I didn't feel like
Mechanically
it
or
belonged in Eve.
contextually?
Contextually.
Yeah.
Mechanically, I think I even did some of the sites or whatever, but the whole including that into our universe was, I think that was kind of a ploy to try to get people excited about something, and it was transparent, and unfortunately too many players saw through it, and it ended up pissing off people. There are a lot of people that liked it too, so I mean it's one to the other, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as far as our stories are concerned, it doesn't harm anything. That's the important part.
Right.
Does it actually harm anything to have a storyline to increase to increase the story of Eve? I don't think it harms it at all, unless you're
Awesome.
taking away 15 damn system.
I will say, so like, here's a good question. One of the things that CCP has said is that they've learned from invasions and other things is that, like, having us to make choices without understanding what the choices are ahead of time was quote unquote a mistake. And yet, during invasions, I made the choices that I made. Like, there were conscious decisions. I knew I didn't know 100% which side was going to be the quote unquote right side to be on. But I still, you don't get that option. The writers of history don't get to know what the consequences of their actions are going to be. And there was a moment very early on in chapter 3, maybe even in Rarvas, where I remember sitting there looking at the sun as it turned from blue to just deathly purple, that I had this sudden sense of dread as a Triglavian pilot, as the CEO of Kybernauts, where I was like, I think we have just done something very, very bad. And I honestly don't think that I would lose that moment for the world, right? Like, regret of your decisions is part of making decisions in a weird way. Do you feel like CCP needs to signpost the consequences of things? Like some people are saying that like not telling us what's coming out because it's in the lore, like we that's just cutting off information. Is the game information what's important, or is the immersion of the not knowing that's important?
Immersion is everything in this game. That whole "I was there" thing that everyone likes to make fun of. I'll be honest with you. I have many "I was there" moments that I wouldn't trade for anything. Um, and you're being there when that sun changed colors is one of those moments. So I don't like the idea of telling everybody this is what's going to happen. This is what to expect. If you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. I don't like putting CCP in that position, putting the game into that position. What I do like is at least giving them some kind of idea that this is bigger than just some random cheesy storyline. This could have consequences. They should have done
Mm,
a better job of communicating that, because then you would have gotten player participation. Because I remember seeing those storylines, and I remember occasionally watching one of those little broadcasts, but it didn't mean anything to me. It didn't change the way I was doing things, didn't change a whole lot. To me, what got my attention is when all of a sudden, where for my context, where it got my attention is when all of a sudden the big blocks started fighting inside of ISEC because they wanted the system to flip one way or the other, and by then it was already damn near too late to do anything as an individual player. So
right.
I didn't, from my own perspective, if they had included more information to try to get people to understand the ramifications of it, maybe I could have had that I was there moment too. But those moments keep you playing Eve. I
Yeah.
was, I mean, I was there when we got jumped into M2 because Villy pinged us and told us that, hey, there's a super tackle. There was a super tackle, and I happened to be in a hack, and we flew into M2, and then all of a sudden I hear Villy yell, "All Titans log on now," and I'll never forget. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget
Yeah.
the that because I remember yelling, "Holy!" I can't cuss on your channel, I guess,
You
but
can.
you know, okay, so I remember yelling, "Holy shit!" And then my son running in and seeing what's going on, and then all of a sudden there's super capitals everywhere. I went from literally getting ready to chill out for a little roam to being involved in one of the biggest battles in Eve, and it's one of those I was there moments,
Yeah.
and
I
we we
sorry.
we all could have participated in your I was there moment, but Eve didn't communicate real well.
Well, there's two things there. First of all, I definitely feel you. My whole thing, like yours, was one night we were just roaming around in the war zone as FC. We had a little destroyer gang, and I get intel coming in all the time of reports of things happening, and we decide whether or not we go after them. And then suddenly we get a report of a Titan in Asakai, and we're like, what? No, that's not possible. Like at first we didn't, but then we got secondary reports. Then we went there, and it was the Battle of Asakai, right? Like that was, you never know when these kinds of things are going to happen. But to bring this back to a little, like the thing I don't know if that my moment with Rarvos would have been recreatable like in a more consistent way. I think that the secret here is that I knew I could work with Edencom or I could work with the Triglavians, and they both had stated goals and objectives, but we didn't really know the true intentions of either side. So we could choose who to support without necessarily choosing or knowing who is the quote unquote good guy. We could argue which side of them were right, right? And so the moment that I had wasn't, oh my god, I picked the thing and now I'm locked into something that I didn't want to. I didn't just apply my attributes wrong and now I'm fucked. It's I helped the wrong side. I'm letting something terrible happen and I'm helping it. And I think that that's a big piece. Meanwhile, on the other half of things, when people talk about what CCP does need to signpost better, look at all these events that say pick a side, the rewards are equivalent, and then once you pick a side, they're like, okay, now you only get these skins. Oh, you wanted the other skins? Fuck off, you don't get them now. Try again next year. So I think that there's definitely like you can draw a firm line as to like these are the kind of choices that we do need to have a firm understanding what our consequences are going to be, and then these decisions we should have ideas of what things are, but who we choose and how we choose to engage with it says something about us, right? Does that sound fair?
Very much so. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why we need somebody. This is why I'm asking these questions because again, during this year, we've danced around this stuff for years, and people refer to things like the invasions and the Operation Highlander with the Kaldari Dread and all these things, and like people talk about how choice didn't matter, or we didn't know, or all this sort of stuff. CCP really seems to be trying to learn their lesson and saying that this is going to be different. But different is scary. Different means they could screw it up. Different could be wrong. And so I think that we need people there that don't hate on it, that see its potential, but also see where it can go wrong. And so that's one of the things I really wanted to drill in with you, because you are one of those people that could really have like PTSD, right? Like so many.
And I do.
Yeah, well, fair enough. So yeah, Marine Corps too. So yeah, I mean literally PTSD
Number
as well.
5.
But like the idea of like it's not just not trusting CCP. It's this has happened before, right? And honestly, it's been messed up more times than it's been done well. So we need people that believe in it, but also not blindly. And so I think that to that end, that makes you a very strong candidate for this year.
I appreciate that. From my perspective, what worries me are there's a very strong CSM candidate pool this year. There's some people that I absolutely hope to see on that CSM for sure. Um, what I am worried about are the people that aren't in it for the right reasons. I'm worried that they're in it because they want to push another agenda. Maybe they're trying to start a Twitch channel or keep it going or whatever it is their intent is. It's none of my business. I'm worried about those people. What I want to see are the people who love the game for what it is, who want to see the game to keep going, who want to see balance, who want to see the reworks that we're talking about, that want to see the changes done in a more considered fashion, something that takes into account things like when you take away all the ore out of nullsec. You had this or CCP had this intent, and there were probably quite a few unforeseen. If they foresaw the consequences, that's another thing to worry about. But there were definitely some unforeseen consequences to them doing that. And if I don't even want to know what kind of conversations the CSM was having with CCP. I mean, I'm very curious what it was like to be in those rooms, to be a fly on the wall, because I can tell you right now that if they took a giant bat to a good portion of our community and essentially said that we're going to go ahead and take this bat and cave in part of their face, there's no way that I would take that lying down. Absolutely not.
Right. And I know that at least some of those phases weren't really well communicated because CCP didn't see it as a big deal, right? Like the rocks part, sure. But like the removal of the belts was just considered to be cleanup, right? These belts have had no rocks for a year. People are confused and think that the rocks are just not spawning. So, they just got around to cleaning up the database, not realizing that suddenly now we don't have officer rats and now we have gate rats, which,
Yep.
I like to say that the
That
universe is spooky, but a lot of people disagree, and I've come around to it to a certain extent.
So that's something that I would want fixed.
Right.
First of all, the belts would be coming back. Second, getting the rats off the gates. I mean, yeah, occasionally having rats on the gates. Content is content. We got to have some. It's got to be an occasional surprise is part of why this game is as cool as it is. But having rats on every gate, every system you go through nullsec is absurd. I mean, you can't even if you disconnect going through a gate, if you're in anything like transporty indie wise, you're dead. It's just all there is to it. I've got numerous kill mails to prove it.
Yeah,
If you disconnect going through a gate, you're done. So that's something I'd like to change. I'd like to put some. I get CCP's intent of wanting to transfer stuff from high sec to null sec and trying to get this trade route going. That's great. You can do that, but let's be real. They took everything out, and that's just absurd.
So
They
I
need
just
to
pulled up
they
a
need to
lost
get some.
mail. Sorry, you just reminded me because you're talking about nullsec, but this is in highsec. I jumped into my home system with my mining clone in an Astero, and the moment I jumped through the gate, my computer BSODed.
Oh, look at that lost mail. Ouch.
Yep. So this made me very, very sad and mad and disappointed. So yes,
Oh
I definitely
gosh,
appreciate that.
ouch.
I think that the bigger issue here, though, is, or the way that I would phrase it is, I don't like how often things are standing in for design that were not designed for that thing, right? Um, if we're going to have threats on gates, then that needs to be considered individually, right? Belt rats were designed and conceptualized and built to be in belts. So just simply putting them on gates, fine. But as we can see, like now there's like titans spawning on gates because that's a rare, that's a thing that can spawn in the belts. Like if you're going to have gate camps by rats, have that be something that was actually conceptualized and put in with intent, um, rather than just a whoopsie daisy. Another good example of this is local, right? The thing I don't like about local is the fact that local was never intended to be an Intel tool. It's a chat program that we now accept as an Intel tool, which makes it so that we just don't have a well-designed Intel system because we've just accepted the fact that this chat tool will do it for us. And so then we get these bizarre things like if the AWS chat client goes down, suddenly like our Intel network goes like that doesn't make sense. These systems should be well developed, not just whoopsie daisied our way through it, right?
Yeah, so local is a whole nother animal. I um I mean I pretty much have carpal tunnel syndrome from living in wormhole and having to descan every 2.5 milliseconds. It's just constantly hitting, v unless you're high speed low dragging. You've already rekeyed your keys to the space bar, which most guys do.
Yep.
But it just having to hit that thing every 2.5 seconds just to see what's around you. Yeah, it makes you a better situational awareness. But when you have as many people that rely on local as there are, at some point you got to formalize it. It basically is part of the game as a part of an Intel tool. Everybody uses it. Null sec, high sec, null. It's used everywhere except in wormhole.
Right. And I think that bringing this all back to like faction warfare and all that stuff, like I feel like if Eve mechanically is plagued by anything, it's good enough syndrome, right? If something's broken, it gets looked at. But if something is good enough to get by, then it never actually raises up to the attention. And this is how we get things that are left like fallow for years. Um, and one of the biggest problems with that is that it ends up people thinking that like because something is poorly implemented, the concept itself is bad. So, for instance, faction warfare. I see a lot of people that suggest that faction warfare is only a tiny bit of thing. One of the things I heard was faction warfare is great, but it shouldn't be an entire keynote. And I read it as like faction warfare has been this small thing, but we want to make it into a big thing, right? That we've allowed faction warfare to be good enough. It's a system that works. People engage with it. But does it really meet the goals of letting you work for the empires? And I think that the answer to that is no. And that's what
No.
they're trying to fix. And so I like this idea that they're finally going back and saying, like, good enough ain't good enough anymore.
Yeah, no, faction warfare was not good enough. It's I don't participate in it anymore. I've obviously got other I've got other responsibilities, um, but I think faction warfare is a fantastic tool for getting new bros into learning PvP. I think it's an amazing stepping stool. It's actually, I mean, I envision faction warfare as new bros getting into ships, learning how to play the game. They're starting to learn how to fly their ships properly, how to align, all that other good stuff, and then they transition into faction warfare, and then they can start learning PvP. They lose a bunch of ships, they get a bunch of ships, goes back and forth, that sort of thing, until they get good enough that the next step up, the next logical step, is maybe they start doing stuff like piracy in low sec or in pirate space, and then
Right.
from there they'll find their way into null sec, and weirdly enough, the game store works like a circle. Like you start in high sec, a lot of people think endgame is null sec. The reality is, I'm pretty sure endgame ends up being market trading in high sec. So it ends up being some big circle thing.
Glam is the true end of game. No, shoot, I just like blew my idea out of my head. Oh yeah, so okay, great. Like, I wanted to establish whether or not you had faith in CCP's plans, to see whether or not you would be at the table trying to help them make it happen or just trying to disrupt it as much as possible. I believe that you believe in it. Now
I
then,
do.
other side of the coin. Based on what they've announced so far, what do you think is the biggest red flag? Like the thing that like might be the thing that they're treading on, the thing that you want to get in there and be like, be careful. What is the red flag?
So for me, the red flag is their lack of communication. There isn't a specific thing that they've thrown up that I think is going to kill everything. The problem is that they're not communicating real well exactly what their intent is, and what they have communicated. A lot of people are guessing at and trying to figure out what is, what isn't, and we don't really know exactly what they're going to put forth. And what the big red flag I have is, I'm afraid we're going to get a giant swing in the wrong direction.
Right. Well, but okay, so obviously communication, but at the same time, I would say that like our angst right now, whether or not we have faith in CCP right now, means nothing, right? If the expansion that comes out is great, then it's great. And if it's bad, then it's bad. And how we feel it's going to be ahead of time isn't going to matter a single tiny bit once it's actually revealed, right? This is just the period of angst, right? So, but that execution is the problem. I don't need somebody sitting there telling CCP to tell us what's coming. I need what's coming to be good. What do you
Exactly.
think might get in the way of what's coming to be good?
A lack of participation from CSM will be a big thing.
I mean, like
Um,
mechanically though, like what is the danger zone that they're getting into by this? Or is it just like perfect? Oh, yeah, do that. We're good. It'll be flawless.
So the problem is that, like, what specifics do you have? Because unfortunately, we don't have any specifics. What we have are some vague announcements that things will change, that will have faction changes, and I mean, they haven't said anything specific. The only thing that I do know that sounds a little more specific, and even this is kind of a guess, is that I know they plan on putting some smaller station out there.
Right.
Beyond that, I mean, what do we know right now?
Well, so there's the heraldry system. There's the skill queue changes. There's the attribute changes. There's um uh the new career agents. There's the arc system. There's the allegiance system. There's front lines. There's you get what I'm saying? Like,
Right. Okay. So right. Yeah, I did see one thing that did bug me, by the way, was the first of all, heraldry system is awesome.
mhm.
I like the idea of being able to put our alliance logo on the side of our ships. That's kind of cool. I did hear your previous guy say something about, being able to put some kind of a medals or awards for participating in stuff in large battles or something. That's awesome. Having stuff like that, but there's kind of a limit. Like, you don't want to. you don't want your ship flying around with things dangling all over it, or you look like a third world dictator. The one thing that I think the big warning shot is their potential messing up the skill tree. So
Ooh,
they've got
okay.
so here's the thing, right? They're talking about changing the way it works. They're not giving out specifics because CCP, but can this mess with it? I don't know. It depends. There's a possibility they could do what happened in EverQuest. I think it was EverQuest 2 that it happened, where they just blanked everybody's skills, and you could just literally reskill yourself from scratch. Just everything from scratch. Just could you could just like what you were didn't matter anymore. Now you have the same amount of skill points, but now you can remake yourself into
Got it.
something different.
So you're saying that what I'm hearing is that the fear is great, you can rebalance the whole skill system for the new players, streamline it and all that shit, but how do we convert what people already have into the new world?
Yeah, it's exactly. I mean, the problem is that they take this broad paintbrush and they try to paint the entire game. And we have players that have been playing this thing since early 2000. You're looking at 20 years worth of skills,
Right.
20 years worth of buildup, and then you're trying to paint them with the same brush that you're painting Joe Schmuckatelli, the kid who's still trying to learn how to fly a Merlin. And you can't do that. You have to have more of a deft hand.
Yeah, and the new skill, like the skill rebalance won't hit all skills equally, obviously. So
Nope.
that's a good question. So let me pose this to you. You kind of have three options that I can think of. Maybe you can think of another one. One, skills get removed. Those skills, the skill points within those skills get reimbursed. Think learning skills.
Yep, like they just did.
No, that's actually two. Two, they rebalance the
Yeah.
skills and they reimburse you all of the skill points with the understanding that you can reapply them to get the skill back. That's the difference, right? Like in one,
Right.
one is a restoration of the skill points you've consumed. The other is basically a partial respec, right? The
Right.
third is a full respec, right? Everybody just gets wiped out. Everybody has all unallocated SP. Everybody just applies all their SP wherever the hell they want. Which of those three options, or if you can think of a fourth, would you advocate for?
I'd go for the if they're going to change
Oh, I guess the
skill.
fourth. Sorry, the fourth option is we're just removing the skills, and those skills are gone. And sorry, it doesn't matter. You just now have
Yeah,
less
an
SP.
option like that, and you're going to find yourself with a lot of missing players. So, what I would go with, the one that I would actually fight for, is if they're going to rework a skill, refund those skill points so players can choose whether or not they want to keep doing that skill or whether or not they're going to use it somewhere else. So it's more like a partial respect. Because I mean, if they're going to adjust fire or change somebody's um, skill tree and mess it around. I mean, we have players with a skill queue that's like 1-2 years long, and they're proud as hell of that skill queue, and now it's going to be changed.
Right. Yeah. That is a weird thing too. But so here's the issue with that idea. Okay. If they're changing a bunch of different skills across the board all over the place, then you're going to get like, let me take a step back. With the refinery thing, they're able to just say, we're reimbursing all the refinery skills. If you want them back, just reapply them to the refinery skills. But if this is happening across the skill board, maybe even some skills are now taking more SP than they were before.
Then we're
Like
looking at a full respec, basically.
well, I mean, if you to try to do a partial respec in that environment means that the person's going to have to like hunt and peck and look and hunt and like might miss one. I feel like that could potentially be very, very confusing and needlessly complex.
It will be, and it's going to cause headaches. I don't know if that's what they're planning on doing. Um,
Well, yeah, I don't
if
either,
they
but that's
are,
why I was
oh
asking
my
you about
god!
your idea about it.
If they are, it's I mean, let's take an individual with a single account. Now they've got to hunt down and try to find all the various skills that have been completely blanked out and find out what they're going to do with their skills. What about those guys that are multi-boxing 40, 50, 60 accounts? Now they're going to be spending a week doing this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is the thing about shoot, what was I going to say? Oh, you could just be able to make a skill plan and then just apply that skill
Sure.
plan to each of your characters.
Assuming that all of your multi-boxers are doing exactly the same thing.
Sure. Yeah,
I mean, like, for
you're right.
instance,
You're right. If you wanted to individualize each one of them, then yeah, that isn't a lot of extra work.
yeah, because I have 4 accounts. I'm not one of those guys running around with 40 accounts. I don't. That's some OCD stuff right there that I just can't do. And all 4 of my accounts are doing different things. I've got one that's skilling into a fax. I've got one that's a dread carrier pilot. I've got another one that's skilling into a Leviathan. So they've got different jobs, and their skill tree or their skills are very different on all 4 accounts. So you're gonna have players like that are gonna be completely irritated by that, and then you're gonna have people that are gonna have the cookie cutter accounts, and it won't affect them much at all because they're gonna make skill plans. But in the end, you've got people all over the place having to redo their skill plans. And I mean, what is the intent here? What is so broken that they've got to take a giant nerf bat to the skill tree?
Well, I think it's designed to streamline the process, make the act of investing deeper into skills more sensible. Like it reminds me, back in the day of Dust, I remember lamenting because the Dust skill tree and the Dust map were just so fucking good compared to EVE Online's. The map still makes me mad, but I always appreciate, I understood that the Dust one was because of the fact that their skills were a bit more simple, right? There was like this chain that you could actually see visually how the skills relate. It's like, oh, well, I need to do this, and that unlocks these other skills, and then, whatever. So I could feel like this is where I need to commit. Whereas right now it's just a list of everything and I don't know, like I went for a month and a half without training Surgical Strike because I just didn't know it existed.
Ouch. The thing is, you're right about that. The UI is busted as hell. In order to know what skills you have, you've got to right click, you got to hit requirements to see what you need to get it, and there's all these things you've got to do to just know. And the veteran players know what skills that they need. New bros don't know that. Like you said, you didn't know about Surgical Strike. One big thing that a lot of new bros don't know is how powerful drone interfacing is. You don't have
Yes.
that level 5 and you're a drone pilot? Mistake.
Do you know why that is, by the way?
The damage, the amount of damage that sucker will do for you.
But if you notice that skill has a massive damage bonus compared to any other skill. Do you know why?
I actually don't. I know it's a 10% per level, but I don't know why it's so much higher.
It used to be 20% per level. And the reason why,
back to those days.
The reason why was because originally, it was advanced drones. So drones would get you your first 5 drones, and drones interfacing would get you your second 5 drones. So in the very early days, you would be able to have 10 drones. But 10 drones was too much effort, or too much load on the system, and so they reined it into 5, and that skill instead just doubled your damage. And then later on, it was reined in again to 50% more.
Yep. So I mean, what I get commonly from new bros that are trying to play the game.
But why would you know that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that, and then I get the whole. I don't want to train that. Look how long that skill queue is, and then I'm like, look, there are certain skills that you just need to invest in. One of them is that. Another one is if you plan on being Capital Pilot, jump Cal 5. It's a long, painful train. You got to get it. And the difference between Tech 1 and Tech 2 fighters and PvE is a world of difference, and you need to get that train. The difference between a Tech 1 and Tech 2 siege module on a Dread is massive. That's an even bigger change than drone interfacing. If you're out there with a Tech 1 siege module with a Dread, you're wrong. Dock up. Put your skill training back in order and get that Siege 2 module. You got to do it. You'll near double your DPS. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
So these are things that like a new bro can't possibly know unless they're doing a whole lot of research. And then another thing is that's not a lot of research out there. I mean, it's all like patchwork over 20 something years of the game changing, and then they'll get like a forum post from 2012 and it's completely outdated.
Yeah.
And they'll go in there thinking that that's the case, and it's not.
That's absolutely true. That like that's the problem with like asking people to go seek information outside of Eve is that like sure they might run into the right person and get them answers. Sure they might run into Eve Uni, but there's so many other ways that they could have like they could decide to go about it, no fault of their own, that will lead them to despair and failure, or Reddit, which is worse. Like so. I definitely agree that one of the biggest focuses here. I'm running out low on time, but do you agree with me overall that the thing that we need to do to make things better for veterans, to bring back what people really need is people in space. But
Absolutely.
the way that we get people in space is by finally actually making a good game that teaches you how to play through gameplay. That by helping our new players actually get into the game without relying on magically players filling in that gap, that's how we get more people in the game. That's how we get those experienced players their pilots.
That's how we get those players going. Yes, absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah, getting butts in the seats is priority one. We need to get people back in the game, back online, back in space.
You've got 10 minutes.
Okay. So, like, some of the ideas that I was thinking of throwing around is NoSec. Listening to your guys' the previous show with our previous guy, who, by the way, completely got my vote. Um, he had a great idea. NoSec ISK is crap. When you take 15 battleships into wormhole space, they get a much faster blue loot. I've been in those. I've ratted C5s. I know how much ISK is. It's like an ISK fountain, you know. Whereas if I take that same amount of time and I'm throwing my dudes into Ishtars in nullsec, we're pulling down 15 to 18 mil a tick. That's it's abysmal. ISK is what it is.
I make that in a
Um,
paladin in high sec.
I'm absolutely not even a little bit surprised by that. Honestly, and if you're doing the trick stuff with your paladin, you probably make even more.
Oh yeah, no. I know a couple of guys that farm the trigs in the wormhole systems. They aren't happy if they're not making 2 billion within a couple of hours.
So here's my idea. I'm thinking, why not make it so that you do have, so that the more people you put into a site, the ISK doesn't change at all. The ISK amount stays the same. So what you end up with is being able to clear out entire systems full of sites. And what happens is that you've got whole groups of players in space. They're going to have Logi on site. They're going to be sitting there with their battleships or whatever it is they've got. And what you're going to end up with is a lot more butts in space, and they're going to be in fleets. So now when players from nullsec and highsec decide to take roams into nullsec and you want those fleet engagements, well, they're going to be ready made for you. They'll be right there ready for you to fight. So you just warp right to it. Now, there are options of people multi-boxing, and you're gonna end up with a dude with 25 Ishtars doing the same sites or whatever, and they're all gonna be repping themselves or whatever. Well, you know what? He's running the chance of you getting up there, bubbling a group of his Ishtars, and you just got yourself 1.5 to 2 billion ISK worth of kill mails. And you're going to get the loot out of them, and he's not going to be able to warp them all. Some of them are going to be angled the wrong way. He's going to be orbiting, so some are going to be angled the wrong way, some are going to be angled the right way, and it's going to take forever to turn with those oversized prop mods. So what you're going to get is you're going to get a guaranteed group of kills. So this is like a win-win scenario right here.
Well,
Right?
yeah, and I think that so here's the thing. I hear a lot of complaints, especially from nullsecers, and they're absolutely well founded. Nullsec has taken the brunt of the blows for the last 2 years, right? Like we can talk about the
Absolutely.
necessary evil as much as we want, but as a person who mostly lives in high sec and low sec, like I almost should recuse myself from that discussion because it's like nullsec are the people who's been carved out of every single time. Other places might have been impacted, but nullsec has just taken blow after blow after blow. I can definitely agree with that. That said, one of the things that I'm encouraged by what they've announced, by what I've heard from people who talk about what they announced, and from what people complain about versus things like events, it's like if CCP can just get it done and get it right, I think that people are really ready to really like it, right? So like even that with like event sites, right? The fact that events keep you there, the rats scram you to make it harder to like, it makes it more likely that you could actually run into somebody who's already running it. The fact that invasion sites pay out based on the number of people, so that way you want to have more people. These kinds of things, like I feel like if they actually take the next step and implement this stuff like they said that they're going to, that it's going to be really great. So I have a lot of confidence in that. That said, CCP has a long and proud history of failing to stick the landing, no matter how obvious it should be. And so, as I said before, like the thing I think is the most powerful about your candidacy is that you both see the potential, you really believe in the potential, but you also see the mistake. And it's like, how do
Very much.
we bring this potential into a world that these jaded, spiteful, untrusting, insular, backwards thinking people, I'm just kidding. But like how do we capture their attention with this shit, right? It's not enough to be like, haha, now there's new PvE, like it. Like we need to actually convince people that these arcs are meaningful, that the changes that are coming are good, that this stuff is stuff to believe in. And so far they have failed to do that. And we need people that are able to believe in it and help CCP not only deliver this content, but help CCP, help the player base believe in this content. And I think that you could do that.
Absolutely. I have a couple other quick ideas. I'd like to see us having the ability to walk around in stations. If you've ever played,
I take it all
Star
back.
Wars.
You're terrible. Let's go. I'm out. No, I'm just
No,
kidding.
I'd love to see people having the ability to walk around in a station, be able to have interactions like that. Because how often are we station spinning, right?
Yeah.
So
I do want them to work on the shooter as far as like avatar gameplay.
yes,
But I will say this right now. What I really want more than anything, and what I challenge you if you're on the CSM to push for, is the ability for us to extract our player models. I want to be able to import my model into Blender so that way I can do whatever I want as far as animations go.
interesting. Kind of like putting on skins onto your guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I can pull all of the ship models and I can do cool stuff with it. But if I could pull out my character model, extra credits if I have bones, then I could make a VTube avatar with it. I could make videos with it. I could, I don't know, do terrible things. I don't know, whatever. But you get what I'm saying. Like I think that
terrible.
I'm concerned that the effort that it would take to literally bring back walking in stations again is like a lot of effort for not a lot of gain, and that's one of the things that we learned from Incarna. But at the same time, we have these avatars. We want to be invested in it, and I feel like I'm walled off from that. Did you have a response? Sorry.
No, I think you cut out right at the very.
I said I feel like we're walled off from being able to be fully engaged with our avatars.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, we go in the beginning when you make a character, you've got to make his face look so great. You've got to make his build look great. Get to all these things, and that's the last time you deal with them.
I do like the idea of the ship hanger where you can see your ships in the background, so that way you can put your trophy ships up there. But like another good example is like maybe not literally walking in stations, but what about Final Fantasy 14 has G pose where you can like go into a camera mode where you can like make it go through different animations, right? One of the things, like I put screenshots of my characters on the things. I take screenshots of all of you guys and put it on there. But I have to like wait till the person like happens to look in the right way. I'd really like to make them, put their, give me a big old, crossed arms or whatever. But I can't, like, we can't do that. We can't make them, do what I can't take a picture of like Ashtarothi laughing, for example, or whatever. I find that very frustrating.
So what I'd like to see is players be able to, like, if it's your home station, you'd have like say a room your guy could go into, I'd like to see a common area that people could be like, like say a bar or something. You ever see 10 Forward from Star Wars or Star Trek, or Mos Eisley Cantina, that sort of thing. I'd like to see a situation where players can actually hang out in the station. I believe it or not, I actually think it would bring players back. I know you hate it, but I
No, no,
think it would
no.
bring
I
players
mean,
back.
it's fine. I have some videos to send you after this. No, it's funny because there are, I mean, as much as it was what it was, there's a lot of people that still call for walking in stations. And while I am pessimistic about it, it is very possible that it could be a, a good thing and in the works. It could be in
I'd
the
actually
plans.
like to. I'd actually like to do a quick an, balance on ships too. For instance,
Well, yeah.
I'd actually like to see battleships get another buff. I'd like to see them get a range buff, because they're battleships, for God's sake. They should be hitting a lot harder and further, right? So I'd like to see a buff for them. And I'd also like to see a change in hacks, because right now hack fleets can sit 150 kilometers off, and all you see are these two gigantic blobs sniping at each other from 150 clicks, and it's just it's kind of a boring gameplay.
What
What
bothers me about hacks is
what
that the
I'd
word
like to see
assault feels like they're not actually assaulting anything. A range bonus
exactly
doesn't sound like an assault to me.
exactly. So here's my option, right? 50% nerf to range, 50% bonus to speed. So now what you've got is you've got hack fleets that are hauling ass, moving in there at 3,000 some odd meters per second, and their range is short as hell. So now they're going to get into range of Vedmax and things like that. So there's going to be engagements, but you've got to deal with a really fast hack fleet. So what you'll
Right.
get is you'll get some serious movement instead of a FC keeping tabs on the fleet and just checking range every 5 seconds. It's going to be more like flying by the seat of your pants and keeping your fleet with you.
You could
It'll be a
actually
hell of a lot more engaging.
you could cut the range bonus and just give them back their Sig Bloom bonus to make it so they can use
Yeah.
hyper warp drives again.
So now that was fun, but the thing is that they're still using the MWDs. What I'd like to see is
Right.
give them that sig
That's
bonus fix, as well as increase the speed. I want to put the assault back in assault, right?
Right.
Otherwise, just call them sniper cruisers.
Exactly. Well, so to that end, though, one of the things that I've asked for since literally the ADCU is announced was that I don't like the fact that the ADCU is just resistances like everything else. Like I wanted ADCU to be E-War resistances, so that way you were comfortable getting in there under webs, under scrams, under newts, and get the job done for a few seconds before you get out. Would you advocate for that change? Why or why not?
Sorry, I missed that. I saw a dude post something that was
So,
pretty awesome.
changing hack the ADCU from being increased physical resistances to increased E-War resistances, so that way they could slough webs, slough newts and stuff while they charge in there and get stuff done and then get out.
So now that would actually be pretty cool. I'd like to see it do a combination. Maybe do that as well as do an armor protection thing.
I think that's the most positive response I've had to that. You get my vote. No.
Yeah, I was about to say. See, what I'm trying to encourage is a more dynamic gameplay. I want to see people fighting.
Exactly.
I don't want to see these giant. I mean, taking it from a dude who has thousands of kills of goons from a range of 150 clicks. I don't want to see fights like that. I want to see fights that are point blank. I want to be up in their. I want to be up in their grill, and I know they want to be up in ours too.
Final question, most important question. Cat ears, yes or no?
No way. I've been waiting for that. I am the CSM guy who says no to your cat ears. All right, no.
Man,
you know what? I'm okay
having an existential crisis now.
Yeah, I'm gonna say cool. You can have you can have really cool pictures on the sides of your ships. You can have your whatever it is you're gonna do on your ships, but you throw cat ears on a ship, man. If those things go green light, I'm going to make sure that my guys are shooting you first. You will be our first target. All cat ear
emergent
ships
gameplay. That's why we need to have them. All right. No, I mean, hell, I'll give you credit for being the guy that goes against the grain. Like, you're holding your line and sticking to your convictions. I'm
gonna lose. The cat ears are coming, but I'm gonna tell you right now, My guys are primary and cat ears. We see cat ears, we're going to shoot.
See, I think
That's
that's
just
great.
all there
Though.
is to it.
Also, just for the record, snake hat is greater than cat ears.
The what is better?
Snake hat. It was one of the during when they were showing off the heraldry stuff. They had like a vexor with this like cobra coiled on the top, and they said that we started calling this snake hat, and ever since then, I've been like snake hat greater than cat ears.
No, I'm shooting at them too. That's you're putting hats on my ships, man. I can't do it.
My idea though, so check it out. So like I have a cobra on my ship, right? And Serpentis thing, right? Then when I web somebody, the cobra actually leaps out from my ship and like hooks into the person, and that's the web. That's what I want. Have I won you over yet?
Off my game for a second. I'm like, what the hell just happened to me?
Right. Well, I mean, cool. Any rate, thank you for coming and hanging out with us. I'm conflicted. I'm going to have like a long, dark thought, or what is it? Long, dark night of the soul or whatever about this whole thing. How can somebody have so many good takes and still be against cat ears? But you have a very strong candidacy. I look forward to watching it play out. I hope that you get involved and CCP takes what you have to say to heart, regardless of whether or not you're on the CSM, in all things but one. No, I'm just kidding. But
right.
No, thank you so much for coming. It's been a blast. And thank you guys for watching. This has been, or thank you for watching the whole episode. If you're on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Make any questions in the comments or on the forums, forum post, which will be linked in the doobly-doo down below, and we'll get Moce to get you an answer. But most importantly, we need an informed electorate that votes. Vote your full list. Make sure you find good candidates that support you and that you want to support, because having an effective CSM is one of the best tools that we could possibly have. And it's only as good as we make it. So thank you all for participating in this process. Thank you, Moce, for participating in this interview. And of course, the sentiment that you say at the very beginning, your civic cosmic duty. So thank you all for participating in your civic cosmic duty in all of this. It is very important. If you're watching this on the playlist, go ahead and hang tight and we'll get on to the next video. But either way, on behalf of Moce and myself, Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, this has been the CSM 17 interviews. And until next time, we'll see you in space.
Thank you very much for having me. Kill males for Logi. Don't forget to vote for CSM. Fill out all 10 of your options. It's important that you guys get out and vote.
I'm so conflicted.
You're awesome.
Thank you. All right. 07.